Okay, let's get started with today. So today I'm going to be taking a look at this piece here, which I didn't look at last time. Felt bad about it, but I still want to discuss some figure-related stuff. We've been focused a lot on portraits. But before I do, I'd like to announce that there is 1 week left, possibly 1 week until 14th. PortraitStudio is going to go back up to $90. So I know some of you are having struggled with the $80 price. It's going back up to $90. That $90 price might go back down depending on how sales go. So I'd rather shave off $10 over time because of the sales that we develop because of sale time. So I try to my best to not let the price keep climbing. But it will definitely go back up to $90 and possibly go back down as the closer we get to the October sale. I might have more sales between now and then, I'm not sure. It's always in the wind, really. It depends on my schedule because I have to do a lot of promo for PortraitStudio sales. It depends on Abu's update process. We'd like to have the update finished so that the server has less users to send to than after update where we have more users to send an update to. I hope everyone's got their PortraitStudio up and running. If you do have any questions, abuthar@live.com is the email to send your questions to if you don't know how to use it. The current tutorial for PortraitStudio is on the community tab, I believe, in my website. The user guide. The user guide will be updated eventually because we are changing the UI, so all the controls will be in different locations. But currently that's where you can find it for the current settings to know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, go to istebrak.com/store, click on PortraitStudio, and scroll down. There's tons of videos that we've uploaded, how to use PortraitStudio version 0.5 in depth. And you see Abu put together an entire scene and show you how to use the light controls. So if it's too much for you, if you don't know how to create each one of these scenes, Abu shows you exactly how to make and how to use these controls. And then one of these is how I use it personally for my sketches. So PortraitStudio is currently $45. The sale is only going to go up to the 14th. I might not go through with the raffle because of a certain issue that's happened that I cannot continue with this promotion. I may just shift that raffle reward of private tutoring sessions with me for the community challenge, like the challengers that are designing the action scene. So if you want to join that challenge, the resource pack for that will be up again, but it is in the announcements that I've made on my page. Again, I have to go back and pin that up. If you want to join the challenge, I think you just have to download. You just have to go to my name and you have to download the resource pack in order to join the challenge, and you have to upload your work in progress. If you want to join as a patron, you can go to patreon.com/Istebrak. I will be sending out rewards for last month, including all my latest personal work, which includes that side view that I've uploaded on my Instagram, a full time-lapse commentary on how I worked with that, how I did it, the brushes I used. You'll also be assigned a Patreon assignment, very similar to the community challenges that's hosted through the Discord, a private apprentice Discord, and as well as any other lower tier kind of skill level assignments are available for you as well that promote illustration or skill building and illustration. So you'll be working with there's horizontal form studies that I could take a look at if you finish them, that your peers will also take a look at them. There is a gesture club text channel that you can join and work on gestures. It's all just run by you, and I'm there at the end of every month to critique all of the work that you hand in the homework submission channel. And that's it. Please join as a patron if you can. If it's not an apprentice, you can join as a watcher or a pupil. You still get stuff back, and you help support this community. I really appreciate when you guys join as patrons. It's an untraceable amount to join as a $1 patron, but it means the world if you all joined as a patron. I'm not working with any agencies or sponsorships or marketing. It's all just me doing this all by myself, so it'd be really, really great if you all joined in and supported the longevity of this community. Alright, I think that's enough announcements. PortraitStudio sale. community challenge, Patreon, and that's it, I guess. Alright, I'm just gonna blow my nose real quick and I'll be right back. Okie dokie. So this piece, I'm sure you've all noticed what the problem is. There's almost no data. There's no data here on the lower part down. And it makes the body feel very awkward. So it feels like you captured the gesture, which is great, but I feel like you did that with some tracing. Because in order to capture gesture this way, a student, by the time they can eyeball gesture from a reference, they'll also be able to pick up on core shadows. Things level up equally. You can't just have 0 level on shading, or level 2 on shading and level 10 on eyeballing anatomy off a reference. That's why I believe sometimes that tracing can happen. Because the anatomy's spot on, but everything inside the lines is kind of falling apart, or everything feels cel-shaded, or it just looks too similar to a photograph. So if you did trace, you're not doing yourself a service. If you didn't, then I have a feeling you didn't, but if you did, make sure that, if you didn't, and I have a feeling that you did, make sure you're trying your best to break down the parts in the photograph and bring them back as parts on your reference. So how would it be easier to move a car from one parking slot to another? Is it without having the keys and the car is completely not working? Is it easier to pick up the car, or is it easier to move the car in parts? Stick to the theory now, all you smart asses and mechanics. Oh, it's much easier to get a jack and then put it on and move it over. No, I'm talking about the idea behind it, which is obviously break it down in parts. Take the wheels off, it'll be less heavy. It's much less logical to break a car apart, but let's just say that's all you have, and it's post-apocalyptic. You don't have any cranes or jacks, or you don't have anything to tow the car with. God damn it, this whole metaphor is collapsing. Okay. Just move the car in parts, okay, you sons of bitches? And make sure that you are doing the same thing with your reference. You're bringing that metaphor back, so it's less logical to try to move the whole thing as a whole. There's way too much to process, way too much information for you to try to capture and shift it over into the canvas where you're receiving your reference. It's much better to break it down into parts. So find the torso, identify the shape and gesture of the torso, find the main spinal gesture, find the additional gestures or the branching gestures off the main spinal or trunk gesture, which you've captured very well. And then find the thigh cylinders, the arm cylinders, the cubes and squares everywhere else, the cylinders introducing gravity, and any fat pockets such as the breasts, and control your light environment. So what I've done is I've opened up the female mannequin on PortraitStudio, and I'm just going to take a picture of her so I can recreate this gesture and find out exactly what kind of lighting we're dealing with. And this is similar to a demo for PortraitStudio, but at the same time, this is why I made PortraitStudio, so that we have it when we need it for this exact use. When I'm not just guessing my way through the shadows, I'm actually finding exactly what shadows we need. And if you use the reference and you don't have very good shadows, it's a bad photograph. So let's try to recreate this. Her torso is pretty much looking forward. But in order to move the whole torso, sometimes we have to shift the entire body and then move the torso back, because now I have this hip higher than this hip. So I'll shift the torso back. Now I have that shape of that torso. The arms I'll deal with later. They're additional, they're accessory. I'm not really concerned about the arms. And we have one leg in front of the other. That's this leg being in front. That C shape moving in front is a sign of stacking. So that is that leg doing that. And it's obviously bent. And we have this leg straightening up and kind of carrying the entire piece. And I'm just going to rotate the canvas so I can see. Okay, and I'm just going to try to shift over the body just a touch. So some of the stuff that I've been trying to kind of implement in Portrait Studio's models is another little control belt somewhere here to increase and decrease waist width. That's something I'm really interested in. Also blend shapes for the thighs, so increasing and decreasing fat thickness in the thighs. That's definitely interesting. And breast size, which is a big deal for some of you. I want to also bring in some blend shapes or some kind of blow tool for all these components here. But until then, this works just fine. She's partially athletic, partially not. So this is the tricky bit with the elbow, because the elbow is assigned different. One's based on the perspective, so we're just finding the one that works for us. And her body, her lower body feels like it's kind of behind her hips. Her hips kind of feel forward. And this area here feels like it's tilted this way even more, so that means I'm tilting the body straighter and I'm tilting these legs back. Because I want these shoulders to feel like they're doing that kind of flirtatious asymmetry. And then again, shifting that this way. Oh, always shift the perspective to know exactly how to move the arm, because that is when it gets tricky. Alright, and I'm just going to use the W tool to bring these hips down, these shoulders down, and create that asymmetry. Head tilt is down, and then fixing the camera, and then fixing the thighs. And this is all just so we can track down the stomach fat. Okay, and it feels like this entire section is kind of this way, so it's like you can do whatever you want with it really for the sake of the gesture. And we do have a posable hand model in Portrait Studio. These fingers are all posable. So I'm just going to give a very general representation of these. And I'm just going to allow most of the hip to have a curvature on one side to show the extension of the torso and how the obliques have kind of relieved the inward indentation of the curve. So now I'm going to go back to my controls and turn off by right clicking or left click hide joints, and I'm going to shift the camera now to create the same shadow on the lower part of the crotch area, and look at what we got. Alright, so what were you doing exactly? So now the one cast shadow is pointing this way on the neck. Look at that neck shadow. So you had one light source on the neck, and then you had some cast shadows doing that on the thigh area. Okay. On the crotch area, and then you had thigh shadows doing this kind of motion. So which light source are you going for? Exactly. So the entire body seems to be on this angle with that cast shadow coming off the thighs. What I recommend is this one, because this one corrects and works with the curves. It creates an even bigger curve, so some of the torso and stomach area is visible, and then the entire hip area becomes visible relieved from the shadow of the breasts. So you have this really nice amount of feminine highlight going on the areas of focus on a female, which are the curves. And breasts always look better when there's light directly from above. You also see the plane changes. The chest is tilted up at the light, right? So look at that upward slant of that plateau. That plateau, if it had an arrow coming out of it, would point up at the light, and the stomach area, if it was a plateau, would point straight or slightly down. Stomach would point slightly up or straight. And this is the most lovely cast shadow, and I really like the stomach cast shadow pointing away from the light source with the chest pointing up. And then I'm going to take a screenshot with Green Shot, but you can also take a screenshot inside Portrait Studio. And I'm going to work with it. So one thing I want to show you about Portrait Studio's mannequin is that the planes are so perfect. You can blend them out. Here, let me take a better screenshot. Closer up so we can see. Oopsie. Okay, so closer up, and now we can not get that pixelated. Look. And I'm going to get my smudge tool and my soft brush, and I'm going to show you all that's left after you identify these planes. And this is what I did with the mannequin last class. All that's left for you is just to unify the planes accurately. And where we blend is based off the fat pockets and any folds or edges. So folds and edges around the body include the crotch area, one object in front of the other, or extreme angle changes. But the biceps, these all need to be blended in. And you just basically have to watch what I'm doing and you get like the complete look of what you're supposed to be blending. For males, you don't have to blend away that much. You can keep a great deal. You can jump into liquefy and correct the intensity of the muscle structure. But of course, as students of art, we do have to preserve a lot of muscle structure to remember it better. But if all of your characters start to look like muscular androids, there's a problem. All right. So the reason I'm blending with my smudge brush right now is so I can show you how simple it is once you find your good reference and the perfect lighting, how simple it is to cross over into painting. And you may feel that awkward separation between reference and painting at the moment because you're looking at this mannequin. It's very technical. And I'm going to go back and unsmudge some areas because I want to preserve some edges for cast shadows. But I increase the size of my brush whenever I am getting close to or near or right on fat pockets, really, really big ones. And the stomach gets one of the largest brushes I blend with. It's the one I use directly on the breasts. I don't blend away the belly button because it's an actual cavity. It's like just a nostril. But I will blend away at the diaphragm. I'll blend away at the lowest rib cage. I'll blend away at the thighs. Not so much the knees, but you can blend away the excess of the joints. But look at how small my brush is to get to the knees. And again, this is just your reference. You have to have an actual other reference with you. The best way to use Portrait Studio is to have a photographic reference and have Portrait Studio posed for that reference. And now there's no way that the fundamentals can escape you. And look at that. You have everything. Now the alienation between you and your reference is gone because you blended away at the seams that kept distracting you, that you might accidentally redraw. So if you don't know what these fat pockets are, and unless you're extremely underweight, feel your own body, feel your arms. Where do I feel tons of fat? That's when my smudge brush increases. Where do I feel less fat? That's when your smudge brush decreases. And we did the same thing with the planar head. We are blending. My brush is really small now because I'm dealing with the detail of the face. And you don't have to preserve all the shadow here. You can have some degree of this shadow be pretty mild. You can still see detail under it. Okay, so I deliberately push that over. You can adjust at your reference until you like it. What I always do when I use Portrait Studio to help with my paintings is I kind of increase the lower body and just push it in. I really like a larger thigh, probably because I have thunder thighs myself, so I like to bring in that like athletic build. Right, and I like to kind of leave that in there, and then if the planes don't match, it's an easy fix. I just use my plane brush and just referring to the old reference, just correct as I go. But all I care about is exactly this, the data that you were missing last time. right? So you're less alienated from your reference. You feel like, okay, this is test number 1 for painting. You've actually already started painting. Painting has already started. You're already thinking about plane changes. You're thinking about fat versus bone pockets or clusters. One thing I like to do is just bring in a bit of extra shine on the belly. And this is me adding fat to her body, fat to her stomach. Because we do like to have a little bit more fat on a female body. And that would be the norm level. And then anything that is more athletic or more fat would be the other ends of the spectrum. I don't like rock climber arms. That's just my ideal for female bodies. I like to have a bit less of that strength there in the indentation. But the arm length, the hand length, everything feels okay to me. It's right where it should be. I'm not too crazy about it. I would maybe tilt the entire arm away from me just to show that there's more flexibility. If the model posed wrong, which she probably did, she probably posed with a little bit of stiffness, I would correct that stiffness by allowing her elbows to go behind her because that feels more natural. You see how much more natural and less stiff she looks when the elbows are loose. They can do whatever they want. But when you tuck in the elbows too much in a model, or a model is tucking her elbows in too much, see the difference? One looks less stiff, one looks more stiff. Always try to give the elbows more flexibility. And then one thing I can do is just exaggerate a little bit more on some of these features. Use a large brush to create these ghostly kind of soft brush tonal changes. And then same thing, but try to introduce a sheen, some kind of glistening moving along the surface of the thighs. And extra shadow just to exaggerate the light environment. Okay, and then I'll show you the before. After. And you're already seeing your painting in front of you. So now you can have both of these here working with you. You can have all of this new data. You've gotten rid of the planes and the plates of the mannequin. And you know exactly where you want everything to be. And you can just correct as you go. You can experiment with costume. The way I would wear I'd attach costume on her is I would, you know, really complement the pose. The costume is adjusted for the pose. So I would probably add in some kind of extra curve-inducing kind of costume. And kind of just have it trail behind her. Maybe she's walking. Correct her general pose to feel a little bit more stable. Kind of like a sorceress or some magic card pose. And then I would take her whole head and then just shift it up. And maybe in my reference that I build on PortraitStudio, I'll give her head way more confidence. So up it goes. And then on the main axis, just give her a little bit more strength, like the stance. I don't care if the feet overlap. I really wouldn't care about that. I could just shove one foot back like she is taking a quick walk, and then just kind of like a catwalk. Ooh. I'm just going to show the joints instead of guessing. Right, and I have so much more confidence. Hell, even just raise it all the way up. Maybe she is looking down. Maybe she is overpowered. Ooh. Show high joints. Okay, so you have so much you can do with your design here. So I was watching some Game of Thrones reruns, and I was really amazed at that Ilaria Sand costume when we first see her during the Joffrey wedding, and I loved her costume. It was so fucking awesome. It was that yellow dress she wore during the Oberyn fight. Love that costume. So I'm kind of just like pulling from that right now. So we go back to this piece, and you can see how much information you're missing, and that's not acceptable. So I'm just going to close PortraitStudio real quick, flatten. And this is all that preliminary stuff that I invite you guys to do for challenges. Always experiment as much as you can. One of my students was retrying an old challenge we did, the Adventure Fellowship. Do you guys remember that? So the brawler, the cleric, and they were drawing the costumes on pre-posed PortraitStudio characters in a character layout, and they were like shrinking characters, increasing characters. They were allowed to draw without drawing it, and that's the beauty of PortraitStudio, is that it allows you to draw without even laying a finger down on paper, and it allows you to get into the creative mindset to inspire you to convince yourself to start actually drawing proper. So that's one big thing that I changed the way I worked as well. All the latest paintings you've seen me do, I haven't been doing too much. I've been sick and I've been out of the game, but that's exactly how I work now. I can't really paint without seeing it in front of me. Maybe my visualization sucks nowadays. Maybe I need a little bit more convincing, but this is definitely something that might help you with your inspiration at least, and then moving all the way up into having accurate realism and lighting. So you have that double cast shadow from the top, on the face, and then you've got those other cast shadows, but I'm just going to go ahead and fearlessly apply those general plane changes, and just thinking about the belly button as a radial shade. Okay, and then getting my blocking brush and doing the same thing. So if you guys remember a long time ago in the good old days, I'd be looking through Google trying to find the reference to help with this. So I'm so happy that, you know, where my mind is right now is I'm just all about the repaint. I'm not flustered with PortraitStudio. I mean, flustered with Google, and I'm just relaxed with PortraitStudio. Okay, so I'm just laying in those plane changes, deciding how bright I want to go in this particular area, showing off where there might be bone. And one of the figure drawings that I did on my website, same exact thing. I'm just blocking, and I'm not really scared to block in wrong, because there's really no way to block in wrong. Write that back to me. As long as you're thinking in blocks, you're thinking in geometry. So unless you're blocking in, but your brush is super small, and now you're drawing in and blocking in with lines, like unless you manage to do that, then you're blocking in wrong. But of course, then it's not blocking anymore. Blocking in means you actually have to have cubes and blocks all hanging around, floating around, and there's really no way to fuck that up. Because as long as you're thinking about cubes, you are setting yourself up for the success. I like a symmetrical layout for a character reveal. A queen throne, I really like symmetry. I know symmetry is very boring for some people. And for book covers and illustration, yes, it's extremely boring. I don't recommend it. But I like symmetry for character design. I love it. Costume, stance, everything. It's just, you know, part of my MO, part of my design is to work with symmetry. I like things neat. And you see what we're doing here is we're being messy with the planes the same way the PortraitStudio model was messy, and not really messy, but these big plane joints were in the way. But the light was still accurate, wasn't it? So that's kind of the same thing we're dealing with right now. We are blocking in, but looking at the navigator. And if your eye isn't constantly jumping to the navigator, something is seriously wrong with your workspace, with everything that you're setting up in your dashboard. All right, as for your light environment, she's wearing a really dark cloak, but her hair is bright white. So either her hair is magically white, or her hair is white but with a spotlight from above her. But we're gonna do our best to push this painting to a really, really nice, presentable, almost book cover level rendering. So y'all ready for this? So I'm grabbing that background color. And I'll keep probably revisiting PortraitStudio. I might revisit it again for the portrait, but I think I can pretty much pull off a lot of it on my own. That's not to say you guys will be able to do that. So make sure that you're always having every single reference. Exhaust all the reference possibilities that you can. And there's just a little bit of added mystery here when we're covering her eyes and leaving only the hair kind of receiving some of that spotlight. But I can't really mess with that spotlight till I have, sorry, I can't breathe. I probably have to blow my nose again. Can't mess with that spotlight till I can correct her in her position in her light environment. So before I do that, I'm actually going to try to create a new layer with the spotlight, but on a obviously separate layer, but just with the shadows. Because the cloth here needs to have a bit of light shining on it. And then now that we have that, we can really add, I know this is just a study, but I'm trying to think of it as an illustration or a book cover or a card, a magic card. Obviously, you should need to be a little bit more dressed for that. So remember what I did. I'm increasing the size of my brush wherever I get to fatty pockets. I missed a plane. The plane of the lowest fat pocket of the stomach. The first half of that brush stroke needs to be blended out. Keep your strength low for that smudge brush. It's really strong, especially if, like me, you haven't bothered jumping into tablet settings and corrected tablet sensitivity. Right, so we're just blending away. We're getting all of these beautiful planes. It's starting to feel familiar, like a female body. We're not getting this big, empty, like blank green screen or white noise of no data moving across the stomach, which is the most appealing part of a female body. It's where all the curves happen, and you give us literally no information, and you're wondering why it really reads as masculine or why it doesn't read at all. And if this stomach area is too bright right now, it doesn't matter. As long as I have my tonal changes there, I can correct it. Contrast as I go. Brush stays strong as I move down. You gotta get rid of these really, really large blocks along the cylinder. That is not a female body. Or it's just bad lighting. Females have very different lighting from males, at least for a good photographer. You want photographs that cancel out shadows that might deter from the beauty of the face or add masculinity. Shadows that exaggerate jawline for males are not a good idea. Shadows that, lighting that may exaggerate wrinkles or create a shadow from the mouth and the nose, that laugh line, you want to cancel that out. So usually a light source that's on the camera, pointing directly at the face, canceling out that Hitler mustache of the nose shadow, is good for females. But when you don't care about the portrait so much, you care about the body, then you're thinking about shadows and light source that complements the figure. And those are the ones that show cylinders completely. On the surface of the cylinder, we're seeing lots of light. So I'll be taking my birthday break next week, the 20th or the 19th. I still haven't decided how much cleaning I need to do before my guests come. You know, whether or not I kind of want to start my vacation early and close off some stuff before I sign out for like a week or two. But I will be gone, and I'll be back on the 2nd of July or the 4th of July. Cannot believe I'm already saying the word July. I don't know how that happened so fast. Just yesterday it was March and I was crying about the bad weather. I don't know where the hell July came from, but it came out of nowhere and smacked me right in the face. Alright, and I'm casting the shadow of the torso. This is all just me freestyling, and a lot of the shadows I add in the paintings you see me do are fake. But they look right. You know, they feel, something about them feels right, and that's okay if you kind of deter it away. The arms are still technically inside the dress, and we have to start showing how the body is disappearing into the cape. You see that? That's something you guys forget. You forget to slowly reveal, and this is all radial shading. Brushstroke number 1, I'm moving along the edge of her thigh while shrinking my brush. And look at that. It looks like the dress or this cape is hugging her. And that's what you want. Maybe a bit too much soft brush, but I kind of have to work with it. I can't shake it off because I have to get lots of work done in a short amount of time for this session. Look at how the face is irrelevant now. You also have this oversized lump here, which I don't understand. You might want to shrink that with Liquify. You're also hiding the breasts, which isn't a good idea. You're going for it, aren't you? Full on nude. She just took off her dress to seduce the king or something. So just show the breasts and be done with it. Alright, so we're talking about you hiding. One of the best plane changes, it's really fun to do and it's kind of a relief for the artist, is the chest bone. And you're hiding it with this ridiculous hair texture. You don't need the hair to be in front. She just took off her dress. Maybe the hair is under the cape. And you're hiding the breasts, which isn't a good idea in a bust or a pinup. I mean, that's just rule number one. If you're doing pinup and you're just gonna go for it and just finish off the piece. If you're gonna go for pinup. And I'm just gonna use soft brush. I don't always use soft brush. I sometimes block in the rain. So let me just show you how I block in. I tilt the canvas with R. Press R and just tilt with mouse. You can press shift while moving mouse, you'll get axes. And so I'll just tilt it without shift. And I'll plane in the entire surface area of the breast by not tilting my brush, but tilting my canvas. And I'll get kind of the right block that I need. So blocking is all about accuracy. It's not about layering blocks together and having this messy look. It's about seaming the blocks together as you need them. So this is something that I do. And this is what I did for my latest Patreon painting. I did a lot of blocking. Let me show you really quick what I mean just for the sake of the lesson. So this is my process and this is what I mean. I shifted a lot and just blocked in according to the canvas in reference to the brush, the way we do traditionally. Alright, so I managed to get these tonal changes, this plane, that plane, preserved this edge. I provided more edges than I needed, and I'll be talking about this in the commentary for Patreon, but that's kind of what I do with this brush specifically. And this is in my sketching set. And you see, it doesn't matter if you blocked in messily, just as long as you blocked in relation to the geometry and that your seams weren't overlapping all the time. And again, we're talking about that tilt. And I can give a curve for the chest or show the curve of that breast, that contour line on which the breast is working. So I'll probably just not care so much about the breast since I'm going to be moving it around, but I do care about this one right here. And that plane is so important, but I do want to preserve this little triangular connection of the breast back up. So I tilted my canvas and I move that up. And then guess what? We can zoom in and block all that rest. I'm going to choose the hard side. So one side of my brush, as you can see, is super hard. One side is tapered. So I'll adjust the canvas for whatever side I need. So that's why I don't care so much about, so R, shift, that's why I don't care so much about one brush that is 100% blocked and one brush that is 100% blendable. I just made a brush that had a little bit of both and started using my tilt tool. And if I really am after, oh, let's promote students to be more connected to the traditional method. Well, this is the way to stay connected to the traditional method. Move your canvas the way you would if you had a sketchbook or if you had a canvas in real life. This is exactly how I'd move my brush and how I'd move my sketchbook. So just look at that. I blended like crazy along a fat pocket, which was the breast, and the rest I'm going to do radially with a soft brush. And I did not touch any other edge in that area. If you want some hair there, keep it. As for the radial shading, that's all soft brush, self-explanatory. 100% feed of white, 6% feed of opacity. Brush stroke number 1, where's the light source? It's above us. 2, 3, and the brush climbs to the highest point of that sphere, and we get a nice full breast. See that? My first brush stroke was probably this wide. I don't want to interrupt any core shadows, so I'll most likely just throw in a big brush stroke to show the change, the plane change. These values are nothing like these values, and I don't want to value share. So, you know, this is what I'm talking about, and see how boring it was without the spotlight, but you can keep it if it's a study. But we unified her back with the cape. We made a bit of sense of that, and because this, and look, I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to throw the entire stomach area in shadow. I know, it's really scary, but it's going to do something for us when we're showing how the thigh emerges out of that, and we're going to carry up the thigh with some radial shading. So, brush stroke number 1, 2, I'm going to do another big 1, 2, 3, we're getting into the highlighters. And I'm just going to get my eraser and make sure that it didn't bleed into anything. Don't want to cancel out all my values. So we gave her thigh so much more brightness to make it seem like it's actually emerging. And you can straight up throw the cast shadow of the torso on the thigh, just like that. And you can smudge it just a little bit to make it seamless. And of course we get into the knee, which is looking away. And then we have this entire thigh, which is not anywhere near exposed to the light source the way that her left thigh is. And so we're throwing that back up into shadow, back down into shadow. You can show where the cape kind of gets in the way because her thighs are leading the eye away from the canvas. And if you want to cut that off, just show how the cape kind of overlapped. So this is why I didn't do this last session, because I wanted to have a nice little day dedicated just to this. And if you feel like you need to block in a little bit more kind of wrinkles or chunks or maybe bone jutting out, feel free to add in some brush strokes that, and I'm about to take some questions, so at Istebrak me to get the questions. Animators use turntables a lot, tell him about that. Really, really important you guys start smudging. You have to start moving your canvas around. You have to start blocking. There are so many transferable skills that while you learn digital, you can transfer all these skills still in traditional. So some people, when they draw digitally, and raise your hand if you experience this, you go back into traditional and you feel like, I don't know anything. The reason why you feel like you don't know anything is because you're not painting and rearranging paint the way you would traditionally, digitally. You're depending way too much on the digital leisure, or the digital, luxury, sorry. So when you move, when you work with smudging, instead of using eyedropper tool to blend, when you move your canvas around, instead of always depending on brush strokes and fancy brushes to do all the work for you, all my brushes promote a traditional transfer, every last one of them. They're even called dry brush oil, because I'm always inspired or moving with the trends in traditional. So if you feel like you're not if you don't know how to adjust lead, or you're not moving your paintbrush around properly, or pencil, or your skill set is just not transferring back, it's because of this excessive dependency you have on brushes to do the work for you, soft brushes to blend for you, lasso to establish your edges. Lasso is great for form studies, but just as studying physics, it's not. We don't have lasso in real life, and the closest thing to it would be to establish that perfect edge is to have a paper on top while you blend. Lift that paper up or use tape that won't damage the paper, and you'll have that clean edge. But that's not really lasso, that's not what we're talking about here. So you have to remember to always move your canvas around, because one of the biggest reasons you guys feel weird and distant from your paintings while painting digitally is because of this. You guys forget you can move your canvas around. You feel like you're moving yourself and your tablet and not your painting, but in traditional, you're moving the sketchbook and not yourself and not your pencil. Your sketchbook is moving. So please don't forget to rotate your canvas, all right? Even if you're traditional, I always invite you guys to attend my classes, because this is exactly what I'm doing. Is that I'm trying to make it seem like the skill I'm teaching is not Photoshop dependent. I don't care if you use Photoshop or anything else. Maybe if you really like liquify, you might want to liquify on Photoshop, so much more sophisticated. But really start using, and I try to teach bridging that gap between traditional and digital, which is why I've been on this like 3-year campaign to promote smudging. You have to smudge, because that's what you have in real life. You have nothing else. And real life is like the canon that we aim for. Yes, there's things that real life can't do. For instance, having access to such vibrant colors, being able to create translucency the way we can never with traditional work. There's a benefit to digital. Digital is amazing. It's opened worlds and changed the way we have concept art. Digital is a god in and of itself. But I like to refer back to traditional because sometimes I want to sketch, and I don't want to be the kind of artist that can't sketch anymore and has to draw on a tablet. So yeah, we have fold studies coming up in PortraitStudio. There are cloth models, yes. We will be adding different age groups. I love PortraitStudio, but could you add more models for different age groups, body types? Yes, we will. There are some models in there currently that have different age groups and weight, but yeah, we will be bringing a lot, as much as we can do as a 2-man team, and really it's a 1-man team. I'm just the one kind of in the background, making decisions on what's available, but I was taking the reins on all the creative choices. Some stuff, technical stuff like drawing on the screen, some stuff I demand because I use PortraitStudio to teach, but a lot of the choices made creatively are now up to Abu. He's taken the reins. It's his baby now. It's just as much as he can push in. It's a 1-man group basically is what I'm saying. And hopefully, everything that you guys need comes out of PortraitStudio. There's a massive update coming up. It might be in June. It might be early July. Again, it just depends on how much Abu feels like it needs to gestate for. Before, really plain, we're looking at really, really simplistic values. And if you don't think about the values on the surface area, then you're not thinking about the anatomy. So the anatomy reveals the lighting, and the lighting reveals the values. The anatomy, sorry. So it's back and forth. And then we pushed that body back inside the cape. So before, and we included the cast shadow and the spotlight. Really, really crazy change in output of information when you have the right kind of referencing. How do you construct a figure? Do you start with a gesture? Absolutely. You have to start with a gesture. You saw how I successfully created this model right away in PortraitStudio. You can open up PortraitStudio and pose her and try to make her look good, but you're not an actor. You're not a dancer. You need a reference in order to know what to do with the body, or else you're just going to be posing a model as awkward as you would have put yourself in that pose, as awkwardly as you would have acted it out. So if you're not a good actor or a dancer, you're not going to be making very, very good gestures to begin with, because you don't know how to explore your body or dance with it or interpret. So look for good references on Google. That's when you jump into Google. That's when you go into YouTube and look up dance videos, interpretive dance. Look at what these people are doing. If you're drawing an action scene and you're drawing a guy with a sword jumping from a building, look for someone actually doing that, or training, or some parkour shit, and capture that gesture. Draw it. Then after you draw it, bring it into PortraitStudio. Once you bring it in, pose the character, adjust it as needed, and you will have had all of the major anchors of the trunk of the body to the arms, to the tilts in the gesture, to the open or closedness of the gesture, decided by the person doing the parkour, not by you. Because if you're a bad dancer and a bad actor, you're going to choose bad gestures. Have somebody else choose them for you, and you study them in the back end. Okay? Also, what do you think about coloring a grayscale artwork with gradient maps? And what is the best way to color grayscale? There's so many ways. The best way to color grayscale is to not stay in monochromatic. Cancel out as much monochromatic as possible. Find areas that could afford to be in another tint or another hue and do that. Too often to do the whites of the eyes stay beige. You guys change the skin to beige, but you also change the whites of the eye to beige. Why? The whites of the eyes are not beige. They're grayish or bluish. You guys forget about water lines and blush. You guys forget about blood traffic. You guys forget about how reds are, and if the shirt was red, you guys forget about how reds are oranger in the light source and purpler in the shadow. But you guys, when you do grayscale color, you'll just make the whole thing red. The same red tint is going to be in the shadow as is in the highlight. You guys forget to bring in the white yellow of the light source, and we talked about this 2 classes ago or a class ago, so please go look into my video history. If you don't know how to look in my video history, I'm going to show you how right now. Go to my channel on YouTube, and then go to videos, and they're all right there. Also, by the way, I released nearly every single Patreon critique hour for apprentices that I had last year. I released them this year. So if you guys haven't seen them, please go see them. I put my heart and soul into these. But I believe I talked about it, the colors. I believe, yes, I talked about it right here. PortraitStudio colors and 14-day challenge. I think I talked about it again here. These are really, really interesting. This was our magically empowered archaeologist, one of my favorite challenges for the Patreon. And we did a lot of character design last year, moving into more environmental and creature now. But yes, if you guys want to join as patrons, you'll be able to have this year's entire playlist in the history of our apprentice group on Discord. If you like today's class, go to istebrak.com. and click on the Reddit icon to join us on Reddit. PortraitStudio is on sale if you want a copy of it. We used it today. Go to the store, and you can find it here. It's at $45 right now, nearly 50% off. It is 50% off, or a little bit less, and actually a little bit more. And it will be on sale possibly before the fall, again towards the end of summer. I'm not sure, but right now it's only going to be on sale until Friday. I may extend the sale depending on how many straggler messages I get for people in different pay cycles, for people who get one payment a month. I'm not sure how that, you might have missed it because it was at the start of the last month. But again, everyone's life is different. So if you guys do want to make it for the sale and it's not within the first 2 weeks of June, message me on Facebook if I get enough of it. I will just extend the entire sale until the 30th of June. And all my brushes that you saw here, and the brush specifically that I used today is in the sketching set, and it is this brush. This is the brush that I used today, and that's the one that you can rotate with to get a soft edge block and a hard edge block. Thank you everyone for watching. Jump over to Patreon if you want to support me. And that's it. Show your friends PortraitStudio, and any support that we get keeps the community alive. And I really appreciate everyone for buying PortraitStudio. Thank you all for your support. You're all wonderful. And my birthday is coming up, so if you guys want to send me cards from around the world where you're from, this is me. I'm at 21 Day Street, Fredonia, New York, 14063, P.O. Box number 401 on the about of istebrak.com. Thank you all. I'll see you guys on Thursday the 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern. Bye, guys.